Now here's the irony of all this. Okay, I pulled something like out of the blue that I've heard guys say that they say to women, um, because I wanted you to think outside the box. If you walk up to a random woman in like, let's say you're out at a bar or club and you walk over and you go, "Hey, what's up? You know what? My girlfriend thinks you're really hot." Even if you're not with anyone, okay? You're much more likely to get a great response that'll go somewhere good than if you walk up and you say, "You are so hot. You're just amazingly beautiful. Can I buy you a drink? Will you dance with me?" Does that make sense? The point is, she doesn't know what's going on in your mind. She doesn't know your situation. She doesn't know the context you're dealing with. If you walk up and you say one of these common things that every guy says, thinking that they're being original, she's just going to blow you right off. On the other hand, if you say something that's wacky and completely out of the blue, she doesn't know where it's coming from. I actually recommend that you try approaching women and saying crazy stuff. Just say crazy things to them. "Hey, Julie, what's up?" "What?" "Julie, it's me." "What?" "I'm just kidding. What's going on?" Just say random stuff. Say crazy things. Try it. Have fun with it. Do it enthusiastically. Okay, do it to mess with people. So let's talk about how to reprogram yourself. Okay, there are only a few ways into this system that we have in our heads, this complex brain-mind thing. And I've experimented for a lot of years with different ways to reprogram our system here. And so I'm going to give you a bunch of different ones. I recommend that you do them all simultaneously. Thinking. Number one, self-image, self-esteem, self-confidence, or lack of insecurity exercises. If you learn some good mental self-esteem exercises and you learn to build your self-esteem and your self-confidence, you get a powerful self-image, that will affect all of this stuff. Okay? It's an indirect route, but it'll directly get you there. Next, mental rehearsal in general. One of the things that happens commonly when you're learning how to be successful starting conversations with people or approaching women is that it doesn't go the way you wanted it to go. Well, there's a great little trick you can do is stop, go back in your mind, and think through the way that you would have liked for it to go. And replay that about 10 or 20 times in your mind. The unconscious mind, essentially draws very little distinction between actual events and imagined events. And if you imagine an event enough times, your unconscious mind just kind of accepts it as being true. You ever met a pathological liar that couldn't stop themselves from lying and actually believed their own lies? This is like that in reverse. Learn what works and practice in your mind so you're ready to do it. So as you're learning all these things, it's important to mentally think about and see yourself doing them. Okay, Olympic athletes do this. They spend a percentage of their training time imagining perfect performance. Learn NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, or hypnosis, or use affirmations or self-talk, or one of these other things. I've been playing with this stuff for years. Probably, 11, 12 years ago or so, I remember, you may have heard me tell this story, I'd gotten into the real estate business, and I was trying to learn how to be successful, and I was listening to some tape about sales techniques, and this guy mentioned neuro-linguistic programming, and I remember him saying, you can know what a person is thinking by looking at the movements of their eyes. And it was fascinating to me. I said, okay, that's something I got to go study. So, of course, I got into it, and I got pretty deep into it, and I read all the books, and I learned that, well, if you ask a person a question, this is kind of a Bandler-Grinder thing from NLP, if you ask a person a question or you send a communication their way and you're looking for a response, you can usually tell what their response is going to be before they say it. And oftentimes, if you really are perceptive and you kind of fine-tune your acuity, you'll get a response from them that'll be different from the one that they'll say. And the one that you got that was different from the one that they said was actually the accurate one, not the one that they said. So if you go learn NLP and hypnosis, you can learn some great self-image exercises and other things that can help you really get your self-confidence together. Be careful with this stuff because it's, let's just say, relatively new technology, and I've seen people who have taken it and deluded themselves, gotten themselves to points in their lives where they got their confidence so high, but they had no skill, that they just wound up kind of going nowhere, but believing that they were going somewhere. So take everything with a grain of salt. And this is another one that I've found valuable. This is kind of counterintuitive, which is imagine the worst possible case scenario that could happen. Think it through, and then accept that you can deal with it. Think through all the worst possible case scenarios, and then just accept that you can actually deal with them. And once you've accepted the worst case scenario as being something you can handle, you feel a little bit more empowered to take the risk. All right, reprogramming by feeling. So we started with reprogramming by thinking. This is reprogramming by feeling. Now, how do you get to feelings, by the way? Because we can't choose our feelings. Feelings are usually more triggered. It's like you can wire up processes over time where you can have emotional responses to things, and you can kind of unwire emotional connections so that you don't respond emotionally. But how do you do it? How do you reprogram with feelings? Well, you got to take a route to it. So here, for instance, is one. Think about what your life will be like if you don't get this area of your life handled. Okay, we talked about this a little bit earlier. If you really spend some time meditating on what your life will be like in the future, what your experience will be, it will be likely to trigger some emotions for you. Those will probably be negative emotions. Those can be motivating. On the flip side, imagine how your life will be different if you master this area called approaching women. Think about all the things that will be different in your life, all the experiences that you'll have, all the potential things that you've always wanted that you could actually live and imagine experiencing them. That will be very likely to give you some positive emotions. Imagine how success or not having success in this area will affect the other parts of your life. What are the other things that it will lead to or not lead to? Now, if you go study NLP or hypnosis or some of these other kind of offshoot models that have come from these things, you'll find that once you get these feelings, once you've learned to trigger them in yourself, you can then do things like anchoring them or putting little cues on yourself so that you can fire them off and trigger them anytime you want. And while I have had a lot of success with this personally, and I've seen other people do it, it's not magic. Okay, it's not just something that works in every situation every time, but I do recommend that you look into it because you can take these things and turn them into resources that you can use in other contexts. Reprogramming by doing. So we talked about thinking, we talked about feeling, now let's talk about doing. If you want to reprogram your fear response fast, if you want to reprogram this fear of women thing fast, put yourself in a situation where you approach one woman after another, after another, after another. You're actually going to meet a bunch of people in this program that teach people to do this professionally, and they take people out and show them how to do this. And it's probably a good idea to do if you don't have someone that you can do this with. If you do have someone you can do this with, go out, go to a highly populated area or a nightclub, and just go, okay, this is the night, and just start talking to every woman you see. Okay? I've learned this by experience. My own experience with it when that really was the kind of pivotal point. One of them was, I put here a story of Rick and I in Vegas. My friend Rick, who you've probably seen on some of my programs, and he's kind of famous in this world, he and I were in Vegas one time, and we were hanging out with a couple of other guys and talking about this stuff, and we were in the kind of the hall entryway of one of these big hotels, and there was a nightclub, and then there was a restroom that was outside the nightclub, and women were walking back and forth. It was just like a train of women walking back and forth. And we just stood there and we walked up to every woman and group of women that went by, And I mean, I don't even remember, we probably approached 50 or 100 women over the course of that time. And when I started, I was a little apprehensive, and when it was over, I couldn't go back to being the way that I was because I had that kind of rapid fire succession. If you do this, if you can put yourself into a situation, and again, I don't care if you have to hire somebody professionally or get somebody that's good at this or go out with somebody that's really good and get them to make you do it, that's one way to effectively reprogram that fear mechanism fast. Reprogramming by observation. If you make friends with guys that are really good in this area and you observe them working in the real world and you watch what they do with your own eyes, that will go into your unconscious mind and it will reprogram you over time. The first several times that I saw guys walk up to women and just approach them, like just start conversations with them cold, boom, I felt anxiety about what they were doing. I was like heart pounding, the whole thing, like, is a missile going to come out of the sky and like destroy him? Well, after I saw it happen a few times, and I watched their body language, like, whatever, it's easy, that also went in and it changed my mindset around, like I couldn't be the same anymore, I've had the experience, again, I mentioned I have friends that do this kind of professionally. I have one friend who you may have seen on some of my programs. His name's Ben. I did an interview with him. I've seen him just get so many women's phone numbers in my day in different situations. And I can remember the first times when I watched him do this, like, one time after another after another. I couldn't go back to thinking it was difficult after I went through the experience of observing it. Now, I may not have had the confidence to go up and immediately be successful approaching women, but I couldn't go back to that previous, like, unknown thing. The point is to put yourself in a position where you see it over and over and over. You might even just, if you don't know anyone and you don't want to hire somebody or whatever, just try going out to a popular nightclub, maybe go early and see if you can get yourself a seat or a position in the place where you can watch everyone in kind of the main area and just watch it happening all night. Now, one downside of this is that most of the guys that are in those kind of environments that are approaching women are doing it because they're under the influence of beer, and they're not doing a very good job, and the results aren't always that great, and it's maybe not the best thing for your unconscious mind, but you'll at least see it happening a lot, and you'll realize that bad things don't come of it. And that will, one of the plus sides of it is you will definitely say to yourself several times, if that jackass can start a conversation with that woman drunk, then I can definitely do it sober and get better results than that. So it gives you something to look at. And then reprogramming by learning, okay, so by active learning. When you learn from a master, okay, or from someone who has experience, it also tends to change your unconscious mind over time. I really think that in most human endeavors that the best way to learn is to find a master and learn directly from them and get as close as you can to one-on-one with that. It's one of the reasons why you always hear me recommending make friends with at least 5 guys that have this area of their life handled and go hang out with them and get around them. Learning that something is, quote, possible that you previously thought was impossible opens your mind to a new set of possibilities. You may have had the experience in your life where you thought one thing was true and it limited you in some area, and then you had a learning, something that opened your awareness, made something new possible, and then what was currently outside of your limits, all of a sudden, wow, I just crossed right over that. What happens every time you do that? It kind of programs your mind more and more that all the limits are imaginary. So this being open to the possibility, where you were closed previously, has a power all its own. And it builds a momentum all its own if you keep feeding it with new barrier crossings, so to speak. So listening to successful people talk, getting advice from them, generally being around them begins to move you from a place of it's impossible to it's possible. and then a, eventual objective is, hey, this is easy. One example is the interviews that I do. I think that probably the most valuable part of listening to one of the interviews that I do in my interview series is not the technique that you're going to learn, and it's not that you're going to learn some new master secret way of seeing something that you never would have thought of before and it's going to change your life. The real power is to listen to each of them a couple of times and go through 6 or 12 or 15 or 20 or whatever of them. And after you've done that, what it does is your mind now has a frame of reference called, now I'm familiar with dozens of people or a bunch of people who this is just natural everyday stuff to them. And it makes it in your mind more natural, regular, everyday stuff. It's the programming that you get from it, not the content. Does that make sense? You know what I'm talking about? So just getting around those kind of people and having the learning go into your mind is very important. Raise your hand if you find it not only easy, but enjoyable and fun to approach women that you don't know and start conversations. Raise your hand. I'm serious. Okay, everybody look around. Okay? See those people? All right, good. Put your hands back down. Now, before they raise their hands, I want you to raise your hand if you thought probably no one was going to raise their hand when I asked the question. Raise your hand. Go ahead. Okay, good. When you're in a place of something is not a possibility, it doesn't seem real. Now, what I'm going to suggest is, probably a third of the room here, it's, or a quarter of the room maybe, it's easy, enjoyable, fun. And for the rest, it's anywhere from it's not an easy, enjoyable, fun to it's impossible. And that just by seeing those hands go up and knowing, whoa, those are a bunch of people that actually have fun going out and approaching people, that it began to change your mind, change the structure of how you think about these things. And you're not going to be able to go back before. It's going to build its own momentum. Why would a woman be offended if you approached her? A lot of guys are afraid I'm going to bother or offend her. Why would a woman be mean, rude, or offended if you approached her to start a conversation? I'm serious. Why would a woman be mean or rude? Throw out some answers.
Only the ego can be offended.
Okay.
She has nothing to say.
She has nothing to say. Throw me some other reasons. She sized you up. You're not what she wants. Underqualified. She reads minds. She's a psychic reader. She what? She has personality issues. She's judgmental. She's negative. It's an interesting question to think about. She wants to be with her girlfriends. And you want to watch.
Maybe she's on her period.
Maybe she is.
Rejection gives a high.
Rejection gives a high.
Get a high from rejecting people.
Boosting her fragile ego. Okay, so when it comes down to it, if a woman is a mature, emotionally healthy adult, there's no good reason for her to be mean or rude. There actually isn't a good reason for a woman to be mean or rude. You got a good one over here?
Except the period.
Oh, if she's on a period. Right.
Thank you.
That is a perfect reason.
Good reason.
Now, I don't know if you've heard me tell this story before, but there was a great article I read maybe a year or two ago about this guy. I think it was an article where he talked about how the menstrual cycle affects these monkeys that he takes care of. And he took care of a monkey family where there was a male, a female, and a baby that they had. And they asked him, do you notice any difference when she's going through that time? And he held up his hand and he was missing a finger. And he said, yes, I do. And he said that during that period, literally, the male like cowers in the corner for like a couple of days, and the baby is like walking on eggshells and so forth. It's interesting. Well, I mean, just like the attraction or an emotion that is triggered, that is not something you're choosing. For a woman, there are a lot of chemicals that are released into her body during that time that she isn't choosing to have released, and that's something that women have to function with and deal with in life. Okay, and so we get to deal with the kind of direct and indirect consequences. In fact, okay, the actual reality is that you'd probably not want a woman who would allow something like approaching her to start a conversation to get to her. You with me? When I start a conversation with a woman, if she's rude or cold or weird in some way, you know what I usually do? I usually genuinely start laughing. Really, I find it so amusing that, because she's got a whole game she's playing in her head, and she's got this whole thing going on, and I'm like, oh, it's just awesome. By the way, it's a great test. It really is, to start a conversation with a woman. You being the one that's, has the high standards and is making the choice. And the only thing you're looking for is friendly, open, receptive women. There are a lot of women out there that are nice to everybody. They're friendly, open, receptive, really just great people. There really are. There are a lot of them. If that's the only kind you want, then this is a great test to find them. If a woman is ever mean, rude, or upset, which is very rare, it's a perfect screening process. Avoid women who would do any of the things that men typically fear when approaching women and starting conversations. So all the things that you're afraid of her doing or afraid of her responding, you probably wouldn't want a woman that would do any of those things anyway. So it's a great test, and just make it a call that from now on you're going to avoid women like that in your life. It's just not something you want. And if you start a conversation with one of them and they behave that way, just cut the cord. Walk away. Okay, us guys, we love to torture ourselves. We love to punish ourselves. We love to find very crazed, high maintenance, a little like off-kilter women and then fall in love with them, try to fix them, and all this kind of stuff. It's like it's the other side of women who fall in love with guys that beat them, Stop that. Stop that stuff. Put your hand out like this. Slap yourself. Stop that. Don't do that anymore. It's not what you need. It's not what's good for you. Okay, so your value and status relationship begins blank when you don't know her. It's a blank slate. It really is. A woman's value to you, your value to her, and your status relationship is blank. Okay? It's a blank slate. And it's only determined by the two of you and your interactions, potentially the interactions of each of you with other people that know each of you. If you both perceive her value to be low and her status to be low, then that's what it is. So the point here is that when you are interacting with a woman for the first time, when you start off, social status, who's going to have the higher status and the lower status, is a critical factor. Okay, it's a critical factor. Women are not typically attracted to men that they perceive as having lower social status. And women size up very rapidly whether or not you think you're a high status person. A lot of guys walk around feeling like high status guys. A lot of people walk around feeling like low status guys. The guys that generally feel pretty low status usually don't get any attraction from women, and the guys that feel very high status often get a lot of attraction from women. By the way, if you want a multi-hour, 20-hour talk about a lot of these concepts with a big education on status, my mastery program is where all that stuff's found. I actually think at this point, by the way, that status is the core of all human interactions, and that it is the core of attraction, status. When you first start talking to a woman, though, that status relationship is blank, and you get to control it. And one of the things that you do not want to do, you want to really avoid when you're approaching women, is communicating, you are the high status one, and I am the low status one. Or even worse, I will give you the high status if you will like me. Negative feedback loops. You know what I'm talking about when you see a woman you want to meet, and she's attractive to you for whatever reason, from it's her hair or the way she smells, or she's got that one thing that you love about a woman, and you want to meet her, then it doesn't work out for whatever reason, you chicken out, you're afraid, Then you go home, you start thinking about it, or it might even happen in the moment, and you get into a loop where one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and it actually closes, and you can't get out of the cycle. You know what I'm talking about? You start beating yourself up, and then you go, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do next time, and then she got away, and then beating yourself up, and then, you with me? Cycle. Humans are pretty simple when it comes to their strategies, usually. Okay, their strategy might be complex, but they usually use the same one over and over in various situations. So if you have a loop that you do, you probably do it every time. Okay, so you see a woman you like to meet, doesn't work out, you do your loop thing. You see another woman you like to see, you don't meet her, you do your loop thing. Same strategy usually. Again, the strategy might be complex, but it's relatively simple once you realize you're doing it over and over. So one of the most important things that you can do is to get out, to extract yourself from those loops. What's the best way to stay out of the loop? Recognize the signs that you're in it. You got to recognize a signal of, I'm about to go into one of these loops. Step one is about to happen. One of my two best friends pointed out about, I don't know, a year or two ago to me, he goes, I just realized that I get into these loops with my computer where I check my email, and then I read this news thing, and then I check this other email, and I check my stats for my business, and then I do this, and then I do that, and by the time I'm done, I'm back to the first one again. And like several hours will go by, and I'll have run through the loop like 4 times. And I go, what the hell am I doing? And when he said it, I went, I do that too. And so now we call it the computer OCD loop, and we refer to it. And I catch myself doing it now. And I notice that, I try to notice when I sit down to the computer, I go, okay, I'm about to do this thing, it's going to get me into the loop, I got to stay out of the loop. So quick, write down a couple of cues for yourself that you're about to go into one of your loops. What's a cue for you? You're about to go into one of your loops, wherever it is. It'll be your signal to not do it. So there's an interesting writer, and his name is Malcolm Gladwell, and he wrote a book called Blink. He actually wrote another kind of famous book in the past called The Tipping Point. And this is a really interesting book, Blink. I recommend you read it. It kind of talks about that, he calls it thinking without thinking. He refers to a concept called thin slicing, where you're making very quick, intuitive decisions about things based on your accumulated kind of unconscious, programming and knowledge and awareness, and how that affects your life. And this is a good one to read for this particular topic. But what was really interesting was that I found something in here that was some really interesting evidence for the concept of attraction isn't a choice. And I wanted to share it with you because it's real neat when I find kind of correlation to my fruity ideas. What he talks about is the concept of speed dating. Does everybody know what speed dating is? Where they get 10 men and 10 women together, and then each of them, they take 6 minutes meeting each, and then they rotate, and 60 minutes later, they've all met, or some kind of thing like that. And what he did was he went to some speed dating groups, and he met this couple that put on speed dating events. The thing that made this couple a little different, and their speed dating events a little bit different, was they asked the participants what they were looking for in a partner before the event, and then they asked them again right after the event, and then they asked them again in the future. And what they found was that if a woman wrote down that she was attracted to certain qualities in a man, that if she met a man at the speed dating event that had different qualities, but she was attracted to him, when they asked her the next day, the qualities that she said she was attracted to will have changed. So let me just read a little segment here. You'll have to kind of infer what's going on. You'll pick it up. So, for example, if Mary said at the start of the evening that she wanted someone intelligent and sincere, that in no way means she'll be attracted only to intelligent and sincere men. Big surprise there. It's just as likely that John, whom she likes more than anyone else, could turn out to be attractive and funny, but not particularly sincere or smart at all. Second, if all the men Mary ends up liking during the speed dating event are more attractive and funny than they are smart and sincere, on the next day, when she's asked to describe her perfect man, Mary will say that she likes attractive and funny men. But that's just the next day. If you ask her again a month later, she'll be back to saying she wants intelligent and sincere. You can be forgiven if you found the previous paragraph confusing. It is confusing. Mary says that she wants a certain kind of person, but then she's given a room full of choices and she meets someone who she really likes, and in that instant she completely changes her mind about what kind of person she wants. But then a month passes and she goes back to what she originally said she wanted. So what does Mary really want in a man? That little, few sentences there, does that explain what goes wrong with most relationships and marriages, or what? We know what we want. We know what will probably make us happy. We even know what will be a good combination for us. Ever had the experience of meeting a woman that was all the stuff that you really knew you wanted in a woman? She was really a great match for all the stuff you've always wanted, but you didn't feel anything for her? Raise your hand if that's ever happened. Why aren't you with her? She's the right one. Because the attraction was more important than anything. It was more important than all that stuff. And attraction isn't a choice. And attraction can trigger a complete restructuring of values. Isn't that fascinating? If you kind of generalize that a little bit, what that leads me to realize, because, attraction isn't a choice, fear isn't a choice, emotions essentially aren't choices. Attraction can trigger a restructuring of values. Probably more emotions than that can do it. You ever seen somebody do something really stupid in the face of strong emotions? Remember, attraction isn't a choice. Her initial attraction has nothing to do with whether or not you're her type or if you have the traits she's quote-unquote looking for. If you create attraction with a girl and then keep doing what's working and don't worry about whether or not you fit her picture of the right guy, in the short term, she'll modify her wants list to fit you. And if you keep doing what's working, she'll even change her list long term to fit you and stay with you. And I'm going to leave you with this thought right now that I want you to think about for a little while. What do you need to stop doing? What do you need to stop doing? The question we always ask is, what do I do? A question that is usually more important is, what do I stop doing? It's very grammatically bizarre. I like it. What do I stop? One of my favorite books that's ever been written, probably in the top 10, is a book called Radical Honesty by Brad Blanton. You may have heard me mention radical honesty before. And when we're talking about topics like this, that I think are, pretty important. We're getting down to the essence. We're going into the theory and the high level to prepare us for the technique and the how-tos. I think it's important to be radically honest with yourself about what you need to stop doing. Okay, maybe you're idealizing women too much, or maybe you're getting into loops too much, or maybe you're allowing your emotions to take over situations, or maybe you're in denial. Okay, or maybe you're trying to get a woman so that your friends will be impressed, not because it's what you want. Or maybe you're trying to avoid a certain type of woman because it's not what your parents want for you. Or maybe you're still playing out some drama that you had 30 years ago in your childhood. But what do you need to stop doing? And if it's one of those types of things, it's important to admit that to yourself. Because if you don't remove that barrier yourself, then nothing that I can do or present you with can help you. Although you will always have the excuse that you can complain about and get attention from other people and sympathy if you keep it. So if you're getting some secondary payoff, like it gives me something to whine about and that people feel bad for me, you got to make that choice about whether or not it's worth it to give that thing up. But what do you need to stop doing? And be honest with yourself. Be radically honest. Movies. Movies are really interesting to me, and I would recommend that you check these out. There's a movie called Whipped with Amanda Peet. Office Space was a good one. Somebody brought up a little while ago. Top Gun, 9.5 Weeks. Roger Dodger. An Officer and a Gentleman. Don Juan DeMarco. So I'd like to ask you to watch them and ask yourself as you're watching them, what can I learn from this movie? What can I learn? Now, what first comes up for a lot of guys is, well, it's only a movie. It's not real. It's not the real world. That's true. But what's fascinating about movies is that a person came up with that whole scenario. And if it's done well, if it's done right, it can be even better than the real thing. In some cases, it can actually be better than the real thing. How could it be better than the real thing? Because it can be a generalization or a stylized version of like a subset of a bunch of different activities. It can be like all condensed into one thing that you can then take and create your own variations and your own themes. And I particularly like these. Whipped was interesting. They do this, three guys, and they kind of approach these three girls in a park. And it's really interesting to see how kind of the lead guy who does the approach just doesn't care what's going on, and how he uses one of my favorite kind of ideas, which is she'll give you all the material you need. You know, when you're in the situation, when you approach a woman, everything will be there for you if you're just confident it will be, and the way he rolls through it, and the way that he kind of messes with the girls and so forth. It's good. Office Space is interesting because it kind of stylizes and portrays this guy who's just a complete wuss, and he goes through this kind of freak accident during a hypnosis session, and he comes out and he's just like laid back and could care less what anybody thinks, and becomes, let's just say, very attractive to the woman he's interested in. Top Gun. I always thought Top Gun was kind of fascinating because the whole bar scene where they start singing, you know, to, what was her name? No, what was her name? Yeah, Kelly McGillis. He starts singing to her. They do the whole thing back and forth. They wind up, she's in the bathroom, and he walks in to talk to her after she kind of shuts him down. Fascinating to watch that. 9.5 Weeks. Very interesting to watch how, what is his name? Mickey Rourke approaches Kim Basinger in that movie. There's an electricity that's happening between the two of them that is, it's very real, it's very powerful, and it's fascinating to watch. I mean, that kind of, a lot of the things that happen in the movie, that could happen. That could happen in the real world, even though it's kind of out there. Roger Dodger, interesting look inside the mind of a guy who obviously has learned how to be very successful with women and just kind of mastered that whole thing. And next thing you know, he's on a down kind of slope in his life, and you see the dark side of how that manifests itself, but you also get to see him approach women, and he's very masterful. Officer and a Gentleman, Richard Gere. I thought it was just great the way he kind of approached his gal in that movie, just kind of with this cool kind of calm composure. Very good. And Don Juan DeMarco. Now this one's a little bit out there, but you can watch someone that just sees the world through romantic eyes, interacting with women. Very, very good stuff. A lot of useful things in Don Juan DeMarco too. I mean, you can literally take stuff right out of that and use it in interacting with women, talking to them, sending them emails, profiles. There's a lot of great stuff in there. A lot of really interesting insights into kind of the female mind. What can you learn from each? All right, the natural. The natural. You hear me talk about this a lot, the concept of the natural. The guy who is just naturally good with women, naturally successful. Now, he may be naturally successful because he's always been that way, or he may be naturally successful because he figured it all out by himself without kind of the benefit of a lot of the tools and things that we're learning here. But it fascinates me to watch these guys and to see what they do and what they have in common. What do the naturals do? And here are some of the strategies of the natural. Most naturals truly enjoy themselves as they go about the process of meeting women. They get enjoyment from it. Okay, it's not a burden. It's something where they get joy from doing it. The question I have for you is, how could you get to a place where you actually get enjoyment from it, where it's fun? Next, there isn't any meaning attached to the outcome. Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't matter what happens. Not attached to the outcome. I remember a few years ago, right after I first wrote my book, I got an email from a guy who, he wrote it and he's like, you know, I've been using all your stuff for years. And he said, you know, he's dated hundreds and hundreds of very attractive, successful women. And he's like, I'm just an average guy, you know, I'm overweight, whatever. And he talked about, one of the things that was just really interesting in some of the communication we had was, he talked about how he would deliberately do things to kind of piss women off. I don't recommend that you do this. And he talked about at one point where like some woman got upset at him and like threw her drink on him or something in a bar, and how he just fell down on his knees laughing and like begging for her forgiveness, like mock begging. Please, oh goddess, forgive me for offending you. And he's just laughing his ass off. No attachment. Just don't care. Most of the guys that I know that are really good with, they just don't care what the particular outcome is. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. No attachment to any specific outcome. Okay, so we've got no meaning and no attachment. The two together. I think I kind of overlapped there. No concern for what she's thinking or what she thinks of him. Okay? And I don't mean this in kind of a cold, like, you know, sociopath kind of way. I mean it in a, what she thinks is her business, what she does with it is hers. Doesn't have any impact on me. Doesn't matter to my life. It's not going to affect me. Calm, casual, natural approach. Now, what do I mean by a natural approach? Well, one of the things I mean is not being yourself. Okay? A woman can't always tell who the real you is, okay, if you can fake it pretty good. But a woman can tell if you're feeling uncomfortable enough to not be being yourself. I don't know if that makes sense. But when you act natural, that means you're acting cool, calm, collected, comfortable. Comes across as natural. Smooth, easy conversation, like talking to an acquaintance or a friend. One of the things that a lot of guys are afraid of is a stilted, kind of slow conversation that's uncomfortable and nervous. Guys that are naturals, that doesn't happen. And if it does, it's her that's nervous or her that's stilted. He's just cool, calm, just keeps going. One of the things that you'll find is when you get a lot of what you might call self-confidence, a lot of self-esteem, a lot of skill in this area, when you start interacting with women and you have a lot of personal power, women that you interact with will get nervous around you. They will start to not know how to handle the situation. And it's important to recognize the difference between her being nervous because she's attracted to you or nervous because you have so much confidence and power, and her being like, you're just kind of a jackass and I want to put the freeze on. Teasing, flirting, overly comfortable, having higher status than her. Overly comfortable. Overly comfortable. One thing that guys who are not that experienced with women, kind of one of their issues that I notice they commonly have, is they're very self-conscious. They don't want to screw up. They don't want to do anything wrong or make a mistake or drop their food on themselves. You know, that kind of thing. Spit while they're talking. Well, the natural actually takes those moments and uses them to his advantage. Okay, reframes them so that if he screws something up, it's like, you know, you spit out some food, it's like, you know, this must be you having some kind of weird negative effect on me. It's not my fault. Or if, like, you know, you spit food out and it like hits her, you're like, oh, how'd that taste? It's good stuff, isn't it? All right? The natural is always overly confident. She loves me, and if I screw up, it's like the natural realizes that if he screws up, it's actually to his advantage because she gets to see a more human side of him. That's very different than acting nervous and tentative and weak and weird the whole time and then acting confident here and there. Leading, progressing calmly and confidently. There is a universal mating sequence that happens between humans. Okay, we essentially always go through the same steps, and most people are not conscious of this. Well, women are, men are not. Most men are not conscious of the steps. And if you want to be successful with women consistently, and especially successful when you're approaching them, you need to learn what these steps are, and you need to lead and go through them. You need to progress. Because a woman knows what step you're on, and she knows what step is next. And if you're hesitating and waiting and hoping she'll take it, it's not going to happen. And the only meaning she's going to make out of that is you're a jackass, because you've got a great opportunity, and you should be doing something with it. So lead, take the next step. Go to the next place. If you make eye contact with a woman, and she's looking at you, and then she looks away, but she looks down, okay, lower status, and then a few minutes later, you look back over and she's looking at you again, and she does it again, this is a universal mating signal, okay? If you don't go over and start talking to her or strike up a conversation at some point, okay, you're going to lose a huge amount of value that you've built up until that point. Now, she might not be interested. She might be married. She might be whatever. That might just be an unconscious thing that's going on. You might start talking to her and she goes, "Oh no, I'm not interested. I've got something going on." Doesn't matter what she was saying. What her eyes were doing means something completely different, and they can be disconnected from each other. But when it happens, you've got to take advantage of the moment. If you're talking to a woman and she's flirting with you and the conversation's going well, and then she says, "Oh, you know what? I've got to get out of here. I got to go." But it was on, you need to say, "Well, I'm glad because I'm kind of tired of talking to you anyway." Write down your phone number. You with me? You got to take the moment. You got to get right to the next step. Naturals expect the best outcome, of course. This is one that's really funny to me, is a lot of the guys that I know that are really the best with women, they tell these crazy stories about, like, "Oh, I went to this party and I met these 27 lesbians and they took me out to this, thing, there was party they were having." I mean, really, these are the way the stories go. And I go, "Oh man, dude, that's great story." Now, I know that they're not making the whole thing up because they're my friends. But I also know that what they've done is they've carved out the very best part of the story. You with me? And like framed it so that, it's like just that. A lot of guys, fish stories and the whole thing. Now, the reality of it is that, I've watched these same guys who essentially talk about how they just have one success after another. I've watched them crash and burn. I've watched them get negative results. I've watched all this stuff happen right in front of me. They never tell that story again. They've programmed themselves with like artificial optimism. Everything is going to work out. The outcome is going to be great every time. And if it doesn't go the way they wanted it to, they just get right on to the next one. They don't dwell on it. They don't focus on it. And what I've found is that they've found that it's much better to have a strategy called only expect the best, only see the best outcome coming. And if it doesn't work out, whatever, it didn't matter. Than it is to be a realist toward the pessimistic side of, well, realistically, I can't expect anything good to happen and whatever, and then it doesn't, and you go, "See, my expectations were correct," and you're like, "Yeah, but you're still lame and unhappy and getting no chicks. So don't do that. Expect the best." If things don't work out, shakes it off and never looks back. The naturals that I know essentially never, ever sit around and whine about how that one got away. Or this girl, I was talking to her and, "Damn, I don't know what happened. It was working and then it like stopped. What did I do wrong?" It just doesn't happen. It doesn't strike them that that would be a useful thing to do. Just shake it off and get right on to the next thing. It's almost as if they, like a neuro-linguistic programming thing, they reach into their slide projector, they whip the slide out, called that moment that just happened, and they just fling it out into the universe, and they go, "That's just not part of my deal anymore. What can I expect?" I would say that a large percentage of men who have fear around approaching women, one of the reasons that we kind of can't do it is that we literally don't know what to expect. We don't know what an outcome is in a typical situation like this. Okay, so for a guy who has no frame of reference and might be talking to me about approaching women, a question might be, well, what happens when you start conversations with these women? What do they do? And I think at some level we all wonder what is a likely thing to have happen. And I just want to kind of talk about a few situations, what happens on average in various, environments and so forth. Now here's the interesting part. The better you get at this, the more skill you have, the more practice you have, the more experience you have, the more you'll find that things go better and better and better for you. Why is that? Because you learn to combine seeing the right moment and the right opportunity with seeing the right person at the right time, with understanding the environment. And so everything kind of starts to line up. Okay, I know guys who are, I'm being general here, but essentially never get rejected by women. It just doesn't happen. And if you ask them, you'd say, well, what's your strategy for approaching women and picking them up? And they'd say, I never approach women. What are you talking about? You go, well, how do you get so many of them then? Well, just something happens. Like I see them, they see me. I know they're single. Whoa, you know they're single. How do you know that? Well, it's obvious. The more you do this stuff, the more you fine-tune your skills, the more you can see things, and the more success you get. While you're learning, here are some of the things that you might expect. If you are, let's just say, a newbie, you've never really approached women that you don't know before, kind of in public places kind of thing. If you learn something that works really well, like for instance walking up to a woman and asking her opinion on an interesting, maybe dramatic topic or something like that, or potentially one of these kind of crutches I referred to earlier, like palmistry or handwriting analysis, or one of these kind of things, or just one of these other things you're going to learn in this program. If you get your concept or your theme or your routine or your story or whatever your approach, whatever you want to call it, if you get one down and it's really good and you kind of can it and you become really good at delivering it, you can expect that in most situations it'll probably go pretty well if you get pretty good at it. Like I said, I have watched so many guys approach so many women in so many different types of situations, just about everything that you can imagine, and I've done it myself. And I'm crazy. I'll try anything out. If somebody tells me that something is really stupid and women will really think you're a dumbass if you do it, I'll go try it immediately because I want to see what that is. I will say that in most situations, the worst that'll happen in most situations is that a woman will just sit there kind of cold and unimpressed and be like, yeah. That's usually kind of as bad as it gets. I mean, really. If you go out to a bar where a lot of drunk men have been like putting their hands on women and you're there at like 1:45 right before it closes, and you find like the woman that dresses the sexiest to get all the attention and to get guys to touch her just so she can get upset at them for doing it, okay, you might get a little bit more negative response. But avoid those like I talked about earlier. But I just want to let you know that what you can generally expect in almost any situation, the worst that you're going to get is a woman that's just going to kind of be like, cold. And you'll be able to feel it pretty quickly and you'll probably just move on. If you can deal with that, if you can just deal with that happening, you'll be fine. It's not, in my experience anyway, it's not reasonable to expect bad things to happen, like violence or women getting upset or women feeling really bothered or disturbed or any of that. I mean, I've walked up to women, groups of people sitting alone outside at coffee shops, walking down the street, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times in every kind of situation. And for the most part, if you're just friendly and open and just casual and having a good time and you just kind of say, hey, what's going on? Most of those, if you're just happy, even if you don't have anything, will go pretty well. Women will just be like, oh, hey, friendly person, what's up? How's it going? Now, if you are real weird and nervous and freaked out and like sketchy in every way that a man can be, and thinking all kinds of weird negative thoughts, and you have a lot of fear going through your veins when you walk over to a woman, as another living creature, she's going to pick that stuff up and it's going to weird her out a little bit. So you might, if you're that way, you might be okay with the idea that she's going to maybe freak out a little bit, and that'll be mostly because you're communicating your internal state to her, and she's picking that up and doesn't really know what to do. She doesn't know whether you're about to start stalking her or do something weird. So it's your nerves, not the fact that you're actually approaching her, that is usually having that effect. Does that make sense? You know what I'm talking about? Who here has ever been really, really nervous, sketched out, walked up to a woman, and she got weirded out by the whole process? Okay, good. Just making sure that that's happened to more people than just me. All right. One of the things that really strikes me watching men approach women is that oftentimes what the casual observer might think of as a more risky approach will often work much better than a more conservative kind of approach. So for instance, if you see 10 women sitting at a table outdoors at let's say you're at a nice hotel or something and you're walking around with your friends, you see 10 women sitting and having lunch, and there's people everywhere and maybe a bunch of guys looking over at them. If you're the guy that walks over and strikes up the conversation with the 10 women, they're going to love you, okay? Especially if it's entertaining and interesting, because there's going to be some male energy. It'll be kind of fun. It'll give them something to talk about, and you're going to be the hero. And if it goes over well, which if you know what you're doing, it will, and if you use some of the things you're going to learn in this program, it will, you will now be standing there with you and 10 women and essentially having your choice of what you want, while all the rest of the guys that are around looking, wishing that they could have done something, are sitting back going, bastard. Whereas if, let's say, you wanted to take a more conservative approach, you were like, okay, that girl, I like her. I'm going to wait till she gets up and goes to the bathroom, and then I'm going to corner her in the hallway and see if I can get her number. Well, that might work for you, but just think about the upside reward of talking to all 10 at once rather than just waiting for the moment to talk to the one. So again, as the casual observer, you'd look at that and go, well, that seems a lot riskier because you could get rejected by all 10 women and then they won't talk to you anymore. Great. Doesn't matter. Would you have 30 seconds invested? So oftentimes the riskier approach works a lot better. And I have found when I first started out, I would walk up to women and usually just give them a compliment, like something like, you are stunning. And be all dramatic about it. Worked pretty good, actually. Okay, like got a lot of conversations started. What I found was that if I walked up to the hottest woman that I could find and I did that, it usually worked better than if I walked up to like the 7th hottest woman and kind of did it. And what I've learned since then is things like, again, the thing that seems riskier, if you're in a public place and there are a bunch of people there and there's a really, really attractive woman, if you don't waste any time, you get right over there and you start talking to her, all the women in the area have already picked out the most attractive woman. Okay, she's the competition. They already don't like her. And if you're talking to her, well, who's he? And why isn't he looking at me? Why is he talking to her? Your status skyrockets because everyone kind of notices this event happening. So maybe things don't work out. But I'll tell you what, when you go talk to the 7th cutest woman in the place who saw you talking to the hottest one, you're on a different level. Okay? Things are working differently. So here are some good places. I mean, I'm sure you can find all your own good places. I'm going to just recommend some what I consider obvious ideas for you to try out if you're learning. Okay, so coffee shops in trendy, hip areas, bookstores near a college, lunch spot near a huge high-tech or high-end business office complex, happy hour near a professional, like a beauty school or other location. Go out early to a trendy bar or restaurant or club, right, where women are finishing dinner. College campuses at lunchtime or early afternoon. Yoga classes are good. If you want to be successful approaching women, it makes more sense to go where there are a lot of them and you have a high probability than to try to learn all the skills so that the one random one you see once in a while, you could like jump out of your car and chase her down the street. Is that making sense to you? And what I find a lot of guys say is they're like, oh, well, there's this one girl at this coffee shop that I really like. How do I approach her? And I go, you're asking the wrong question. The question is, how do you find 100 of her, right? And then take your new technique and go try it on all of them. So it's important to identify the type of woman that you're looking for. Okay, we've talked about this. What kind of woman do you want? What do you want out of the approach, and to know that. And then to actually invest some time finding the place where you would be most likely to be successful approaching the kind of woman that you would like to approach. One of my friends, who was it that was, Craig, was it you that was telling me that you knew somebody that got a job working at a gay club even though he was straight just to meet the girls?
That would sound like something my friend Mike would do.
Okay. And no, I don't remember who was telling me this, but somebody was telling me recently that there was a guy who literally got a job, I think he was a bartender or something, and he specifically got it at a gay club. He was straight, just because, I don't know if you've ever seen the inside of a gay club, but it's usually, 200 guys and then like 5 beautiful women. And he was just constantly dating all these hot women. He went where his target audience was and had no competition. Fascinating, huh? So where is that person that you'd like to meet hanging out? Where are a bunch of them hanging out? And how could you set yourself up and position yourself? One of the stories I've told at one of my programs, I remember I was out in some city around here, and I went into a Starbucks, and there was a guy who was sitting at the Starbucks in this kind of funky neighborhood, drawing these huge, like, stylized action figure kind of like comic book characters of powerful, like, beautiful women, like warrior chicks with shields and guns and like, whatever. And he's sitting there drawing them like right next to where you get your drinks. And I went, that is brilliant. Drawing pictures of beautiful, powerful women right in the path of a bunch of them. That's going to get you some attention. Do you think that he had to start conversations with a lot of women? No way. As women watched him, they were going, maybe you could draw a picture of me, and I could be a goddess like that. So find your own best place. You could try some of these out, but, try your own. And I'll tell you what, a Starbucks in one location will be completely different from a Starbucks that's 3 blocks away. It all depends on what's around it. If you go to a Starbucks at a college campus at around lunchtime, like a big college campus, it's going to be totally different than your little Starbucks out in the supermarket, out in the strip mall, out in the boondocks. Totally different. You need to go out and check these places out. All right, so you'll run into a lot of types of situations here, okay? We're not going to get into a lot of specific techniques, but I just want you to think these things through, and I want you to know that it's important to think them through. So you might be in close proximity, like almost setups, like standing in lines, shopping, that kind of thing, where you're somewhere and there's going to be a woman right there. There might be a woman like working at the register behind the counter, or maybe you go to a place where a lot of people kind of congregate in one place. These are perfect opportunities because you've already got something in common. You could create and invent all kinds of wonderful approaches. Natural conversations, also including waitresses, checkers, baristas, that kind of thing. These are some of my very favorite. One of my favorite types of approaches is the approach where you go out, you meet a woman, you say hi to her, you mess with her a little bit, then you leave knowing you're going to see her again, right? Come back another couple of days later because I'm there, mess with her some more. One of my favorites is when a woman, and this happens to me on a very regular basis, that like works at a store that I go to once in a while or a coffee shop or whatever, after 5 or 10 times, finally just goes, when are you going to take me to lunch or something? When is this going to happen? Like all the rest of everything's working. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you asking me out, or you don't even want my phone number? It's one of my very favorites. It's very low risk too. There's not a lot of rejection involved when she's complaining because you're not taking her number. Cold, I'll call it quotes, social situations like bars or clubs, those kind of things. Bars and clubs are fascinating because to some people they're the devil. They're the worst possible scenario in the world because they're loud and there's a bunch of drunk people around, there's competition, and women have their persona on and all that. And to some people, they're the greatest environment in the world because where else can you find 50 young, attractive women that are all dressed up, single, going out to party and have fun? Well, it's all in how you look at it. I think personally the bars and clubs are one of the greatest places ever invented in the history of the universe for practicing or trying your skills out. Where else could you get women that have spent hours, tens or hundreds of hours, picking all the right clothes out, getting ready, dolling themselves up, figuring out, like how to get in there and get positioned and the whole deal, that you can just for free walk up to and try your latest double your dating line on them for nothing. It's amazing as far as I'm concerned. Don't expect to meet, good mom for children there, but maybe. Warm social situations, parties, those kind of things. I think maybe the most powerful part of all of this is if you train, so to speak, if you learn in the more difficult situations like the bars and clubs where there's a lot of noise and competition, tough social situations where there's a lot happening, or public places where you just go out and approach one woman after another. If you learn so you kind of become a little tougher, you toughen yourself up, you get comfortable in uncomfortable situations. When you get into normal, warm kind of social situations, you just get into a little bit more, of the social world. You start going to parties where people know each other. You go to social functions. You go to art openings, wine tastings, things where you maybe have a connection to a couple of people, and you can just walk up to anybody and say, oh, who do you know here? Whatever. All of this stuff becomes like magnified by 100 in its power. When you're in a situation where there isn't any of the weird pressure or any of that stuff, and it's just kind of natural, all of this stuff works much better because now you have control of all of these different tools and you're working in a situation without all those distractions and without all that pressure. And then finally, cold approaches, like she's walking down the street, or I guess what I would say where you're going to clearly interrupt whatever she's doing. Okay, she's on her way somewhere, or she's sitting, alone somewhere reading a book, that kind of thing, and you don't know her. These are the ones that seem to be the most freaky for most guys. They're the most nervous about them. They get the most freaked out about them. They think, oh, I'm going to scare her or whatever. And what I would say is that if you want to become really good in these kind of situations, you really want to become good at doing things like entertaining, telling stories, and becoming incredibly interesting as a person to talk to. Kind of more on what I was talking about earlier, the performance end of things. Because you got to remember, a real wise friend of mine said to me, most people live very boring lives. Very boring. Whatever they're doing right now, they're probably bored. Wherever she's going, she probably doesn't necessarily want to be going there. She's probably kind of bored on her way there. And if you can be interesting, charming, exciting, and just create that injection of energy into her life, she'll stop and be distracted for essentially as long as you want her to be. Is that all making sense? Yeah? Good. Pickup lines, right? Where's the pickup lines? Who wants to learn a pickup line or two? Only 2 people? Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, recognizing when she's receptive and when she's not. Remember when I was talking about how a lot of naturals tend to say things like, I don't really approach women and I don't really get rejected by women? Well, one of the reasons for this is that guys that are really good have fine-tuned their ability to recognize when a woman is let's say, open, available, single, receptive. And they actually notice the signals before they ever even start interacting with her. Okay? So it's obvious to them, subtle little things, the way she holds herself, the way she walks, whether she's talking to her friend and looking around the room, or whether she's talking to the friend and looking just at the friend, how she's holding herself, if they make eye contact, how that works. You will develop this too, the more experience you get. Okay? A lot of this stuff has to be learned in the real world. Well, unfortunately, for most guys, not only do they not have that skill, but they don't even know they could be out on a date with a woman for 4 hours alone talking, and at the end of 4 hours, they can't tell whether she's into him or not. I think it's maybe even worse than I'm saying. Probably for most guys, they can go out with a woman 50 times and not really know whether or not she's into him. I know that none of us have ever done this in here, but anybody know anyone that's ever gone out with a woman like 10 times and they still can't tell whether she likes them or not? Anybody ever know somebody like that? Not us. Not us. Fascinating. Well, it's important to learn to recognize when a woman is, let's just say, open and receptive, and when she's not. And over time, from learning from kind of these naturals that I've been talking about and asking them questions and wanting to cultivate it myself, I've spent a lot of time asking when I go out and I look at women. That sounded kind of weird. When I go out and I see a woman that I might be interested in, I'll look at her, and now I ask myself the question, is she single? And I'm not asking because I'm insecure about it. I'm asking because I want to see how much I can pick up that will tell me whether or not she is. For a while, I used to kind of play a game with friends when I'd hang out. I'd go out and I'd go, okay, is this waitress single or not? And then we'd guess, and we'd talk about it. And then when she'd come over, we'd say, are you single? And she'd say yes, no, whatever. And we'd talk about our answers. And it's great because, again, free training. If you go out to a restaurant and you're sitting there, you can talk to her, you can do your thing, and at the end of the meal you can say, are you single? And she'll go, you know, yes, no, whatever, and you can go, oh, well, here's what I was noticing about your body language and blah, blah, and this was my guess. And they'll get into it with you. They'll have a great conversation. Free training. I believe that you can cultivate the ability to recognize when a woman is receptive and when she's not. One of the, I think, best ways to figure this out is to do some of the things that I was talking about earlier, which is show up in the situation expecting that you're going to create tension of some kind. Okay? Again, not negative tension, but that special kind that we call sexual tension or chemistry. And when you start sparking that, you'll see women kind of perk up and they'll go, whoa, there's an edge to this guy. It's on. Something's happening. And you got to like lock onto those moments and notice what's different about her body language in those moments. And the more you do that, the more you'll start to see patterns, and the more you'll be able to recognize when you're talking to a woman who's just not into you. It's just not happening. It's not going anywhere. And you can go, all right, thank you very much, snip the cord, I'm on to the next thing. Yeah, one of the most difficult things to watch is a guy trying his hardest with a woman that's just not into it. Just not happening. I remember I was with one friend watching another friend, and the other friend is a guy who's very successful with women, and the girl just wasn't into him, and my other friend and I were watching, and my friend goes, he's going down like an Italian fighter pilot. He just wants to like, you know. Don't do that. Your friends will make fun of you. I'll make fun of you if I see it. Of course, I'll enjoy it. All right, making eye contact. Assessing availability. What a lot of guys, ask me is, all right, so how do I know if she's interested, if she's single? How does eye contact work? If she's looking at me, if I'm looking at her, like what's the whole deal? Well, like I mentioned a little while ago, typically if you make eye contact with a woman and she holds on and you don't look away because you can't control yourself, and then she looks down when she looks away, it's usually a good signal. If it happens more than once, it's usually a really, really good signal. That's like as close as a woman typically gets to putting a little billboard above her head that says, come talk to me. What most men interpret that to mean is she's looking at me, and I am freaked out. Now what I'll suggest is that if you start paying attention to eye contact and you start making eye contact and keeping it and holding it until the woman looks away and you cultivate that ability, And I don't care if you have to, get professional help on this one, or get female friends of yours and say, all right, look me in the eyes, and like play stare down, whatever you have to do, learn to maintain it. And then start approaching the women who you make eye contact with. If you put the two together and you study what the experience or the learnings you get from it, you will start to get what's happening. Okay? There's again, a complex, universal language that's happening here. I also recommend you check out my body language program, because we also go into this and there's kind of a lot of discussion. But get out there and try it. The best way to learn what it means is to go do it a lot. Actually have the experience, learn by doing. You will learn a lot. And like I said before about some of the other things that you'll learn, the more of the pieces you put together and the more you go learn, the more your awareness opens up. And when you have an aha, it will be much more profound than any of the stuff that I'm teaching you. When you get what different types of eye contact mean in the real world, you'll go, oh, I get it. It'll be very empowering. Another interesting thing, if two humans are making eye contact, prolonged eye contact, there are only one of two real meanings that has. What are they? Approach or retreat. Those are them. Animals don't typically make eye contact and prolong it just so they can sit there looking at each other. Okay, there's usually another thing going on here. It's usually we're going to get closer together or we're going to get further apart. I know it seems obvious when I say it, but go watch some Discovery Channel and watch the animals when they see each other. They either see each other and go, huh, you look pretty good. Maybe I'll come check you out. Or maybe like, I think I'm going to eat you, so you'd better run because I'm about to chase you, right? Or you're not what I want. I better like walk out this way a little bit further. Those are the possibilities when two creatures make eye contact, and especially when two humans do. All right, so there are two states that a woman could get into, really, receptive or unreceptive, and probably in the middle of them is indifferent, could really care less. What gets a woman into each state? What gets a woman into receptive state? Any thoughts or ideas? Yell them out. What? Laughter? Good. What else? What gets a woman into a receptive state? Attraction. Very good. Comfort? Maybe. Something different. That's a great point. Different. What else? What? Curiosity. Good. Money. Maybe. What else? Entertainment. Good. The puzzle is coming together. Trust. Does trust make a woman more receptive? I don't know. Just throwing, maybe. Not boring. Not predictable. Okay, what puts a woman into an unreceptive state? Predictable? Okay, give me the opposite of all the things we just said. No, what are the things that make a woman unreceptive? If you're over-eager, if you're rude, weak-minded. I'm going to throw one out there. If you don't get it, I think that if you don't get it, if you don't speak the lingo, if you don't know the universal mating dance, if you're uncomfortable and ignorant, I think that's one of the fastest way to put a woman into an unreceptive state. I'll go as far as to suggest that if you become really good with this stuff, if you become really good, you will rarely run into women that are unreceptive to you. And why is that? Because if a woman really feels like you get it and you're cool, everything's cool because you understand the whole thing, comfortable with yourself, what she'll do is she'll relax because she'll know that maybe she's in a relationship or she's not interested or whatever, but she'll know that that's okay. I think one of the reasons why women are so kind of unreceptive to strange males is because usually those strange males don't get it. All they're interested in is, from her perspective, their weird pervy fantasy. They give her the creeps. They don't speak the language. They don't know how to just be cool. And so she gets weirded out. And what's the advantage, of course, to having, all women be really receptive to you, or on average be a lot more receptive than normal? They know others. They know others. And a lot of the guys that I know that are just the best with women, one of the other reasons why they don't really have to do much work is because women just love them. And women are constantly trying to fix them up with their friends. I guess I would just say to make it a goal to really learn to understand the mating dance. Understand the states the woman could go into. Understand your own states. Understand the steps that happen before and after. Because the more you get a mastery over that and you kind of understand it, and then you can communicate to women, hey, I get it. It's cool. I get it. Don't worry about it. Everything's cool. The more they will want to hang out with you. And if there's something that's better than having an attractive woman that you've just met, out that is interested in you, it's having an attractive woman that you've just met, you're out, that's interested in you, that doesn't want anything romantic, but just wants to see you succeed with other women. Does that make sense? I and my friends, many in this room, have been out and met women who were just cool, down to earth, just out to have a good time, weren't interested in meeting guys because we were just cool, and they were having such a great time with us, just loved hanging out with us, wanted nothing, were so entertained by the idea of watching us interact with women that they would just bring women over for us to meet or start the conversation off somehow. Learn the game, learn how it works. All right, a couple of quick tips. I'm going to buzz through a lot of rapid stuff here. The upper hand, all right? And again, these are generalizations, but never let her have the upper hand, okay, unless you're doing it to demonstrate that you're not doing it. In which case, if a woman feels like you made a mistake and she just like busted you or whatever, you can go, oh yes, you're right. You totally just busted me. My self-esteem's dropping by the minute. All right, so as you start saying it, she starts thinking, oh yeah, I got one, and then you kind of take it away. Always maintain higher status, again, a mastery concept. And remember that a wuss slip can destroy all of the hard work that you've done up to that point. One little slip up, one little screw up can just flip the switch to off. By the way, when I say don't give a woman the upper hand, what I don't mean is to be controlling or demeaning or disrespectful to women at all. It's not what I mean. I just mean make sure that you maintain the high status, because women want that challenge. They love that challenge. And once they don't feel like they have it anymore, the attraction goes away. Do things to negate her powers of beauty. Okay, when a woman knows she has the beauty power, magic amulet, she'll do all kinds of stuff. When she knows that with you, she doesn't have it, she won't try any of that stuff with you. So, make fun of her, tease her. Do anything you have to do in a fun, interesting way to take away that magic beauty force field. Things that you might try. You'll hear things like this in this program, or start calling her dude or brat or little girl or anything like that. Anything to just like put your finger in that force field and negate it, so that now when everybody else is talking to her, I mean, you'll see this happen. You'll get to know a really attractive woman, and you'll have that kind of relationship where you're like, whatever, you're just not cool, dude. But all other guys worship her. There'll be 5 people standing around. She'll be treating the other 4 guys like little children who she owns, and you will be making fun of her right in front of them, and she'll be treating you like, pawing after you like, oh, give me some approval, please. And they won't understand what's going on. So negate those powers of beauty. Remember, she'll always provide the content to riff on. This is such an important one. You really got to walk into situations realizing that she'll give you more than enough content if you can get a conversation going. If she gets past the, is she rude, weird, does she have okay self-esteem, is she emotionally healthy, which you can figure out in the first couple of seconds or minutes of the conversation, is she like okay, not psycho? If you get into anything, she'll give you plenty of material to work with. And it's important to walk into situations knowing that, because what it does is it gets you away from depending on like something that you've memorized or something artificial. Okay, when you really believe that it'll all be there for you, you're fine. Now, the flip side of that is you get into the situation, you start doing something with her, you start talking, she gives you some material to work with, you have a great conversation, and then 20 minutes later it just kind of fizzles out, and you go, oh man, bummer, I need some canned stuff. Well, canned stuff can help, but what'll help even more is you just keep doing it. Okay, you keep doing it. You keep developing the skill of extending the conversation further and further, putting the pressure on, taking it off, turning up the sexual tension, turning it down, keeping the line taut, okay, keeping the tension there. She'll always bring you content. Okay, there are some tripwires or some triggers that can instantly put you in a bad place with a woman. Overall, the big mistakes revolve around giving her your power, acting uncomfortable or unnatural, letting the situation unnerve you, where you lose your composure. It's important to consciously avoid these things. So in the beginning, if there are things that women can do to freak you out, I'll give you an example here. One of the things that a lot of very attractive women do, if they want to like buzz you, like zing you, and take the power back, is bring up sex. Okay? So you might be talking to a really attractive woman and it's going and you've got the, you know, the sexual tension turned up and you're kind of making fun of her and she's playing along. Well, women carry around, they've been through this before, okay? They've met some guys that are players and who have some game. So they've got these trump cards that they whip out once in a while. So, exactly. So every once in a while she might whip one out like, you probably aren't even that good in bed. Like after you've been talking to her 5 minutes, boom. That usually levels about 90% of guys that had gotten that far because they just don't know what the hell to do with that. It's like, or, you know, they'll drop something like, you know what, I'm tired, I got to get home to my vibrator. Whoa, she brought up sex. Huh, interesting. So what are those weaknesses for you? What are those weak spots? If a woman does it, takes you out, well, think them through. Figure out how to not screw up when they happen. One of the things that I've just developed over time is if a woman says anything that gets to me, if I can feel myself like slipping or getting off balance, or I mean, every once in a while you'll meet a woman that's just tack sharp, highly intelligent, witty, and just blows your doors off in every way, essentially. Those are the most fun, of course. The key is not to best her, okay, or to always be better, because every once in a while you meet one that just, you know, just more comfortable in her environment, sharper, faster, wittier, whatever. Just make sure she doesn't know she's got one over on you. Okay, so when she says the better comment that's even funnier, you just go, that was cute. And then right back onto yours. Don't let her take you off your composure, even if she's got that sharpness. Here are some more no-nos. This is just a laundry list of stuff you've probably heard me say before, but I'm just going to affirm them and remind them. Trying to impress her, trying to be, quote, original. We'll talk more about that in a second. Giving her compliments, too many of them especially. One is okay. Just don't make it too intense. Looking for her approval, trying to make her like you. This is a huge one. I'm going to take a moment here. One of the biggest mistakes you can make in all kinds of things, from marketing to business to success with women, is being too concerned with whether or not the other person likes you. Don't be too concerned with it. If it happens because what you're doing makes them like you, great. If it doesn't happen, it's usually not that important. They don't really have to like you. Attraction is not dependent on liking. Trying to, quote, make her comfortable. You know, a lot of guys turn into like insta-wuss if a woman starts to act like she's not comfortable. It's like, boom. Oh, you're not comfortable? Oh, let me see if I can help you out here. If a woman seems like she's not comfortable or things aren't going well, say, what do you got going on over there? Oh, I'm not comfortable with the situation. All right, well, what are you going to do about it? Don't immediately drop to your knees and start pandering. Giving her or buying her things, kissing up to her, acting tentative, shy, or nervous, acting like she makes you uncomfortable, big no-no. Acting like she's a goddess, putting her up on too much of a pedestal, not to your advantage. This I consider to be maybe one of the most important realizations I've ever had. Okay, I call it the originality paradox. Men feel, and I've seen this enough times now to see that I think it's pretty universal, this powerful drive to, when they see a woman they're really attracted to say something unique or original to her. You with me? I've got to say something creative, something she's never heard before. Or I have to give her a compliment that's just going to blow her doors off. Well, the irony is that men, the billions of us that are out there, we're all kind of wired similarly. And when we have the thought, I need to come up with an original thing to say to her, we all come up with the same original things. And so for an attractive woman, she's got one guy walking up to her after another saying his original thing. And it's the same as the 50 guys before him that were saying their original thing. It's a paradox. It's fascinating. In your attempt to say something unique and original, you're probably going to say something that is along the lines of what she's heard 1,000 times before. Again, the bizarre truth is that if you learn a really good canned pickup line, even just one, even if it's simple, it will usually work much, much better than your original, creative, and interesting pickup lines. So get out of the originality paradox. Get over it. Okay? Get over it. You're going to meet a friend of mine probably later today who's going to speak either today or tomorrow. And he and a couple other guys, they have a business where they take guys out, coach them, teach them how to meet women on the street. And they were living over, I think they just moved, but they were living over at this house in Hollywood for quite a while. And I've heard a couple of them tell stories, when they're taking groups of guys out, like, all the time in that little neighborhood, you're going to, of course, run into women. And, I've heard several stories where, like, they walk up to a woman and they say this big, complex, interesting canned line, and some girl goes, "That's really weird. Some guy just walked up to me like 2 days ago and said that." And they go, "Oh," and they like just whip another one out and go, "Oh, how about this one?" And if 1 out of 100 times that happens, the other 99 are going to be a lot better than the one. So, the originality paradox. Don't allow your powerful compulsion to be original screw up your game. What to do? Things to do. Get the interaction started. Okay? Anything is better than nothing. Just get it started. Get something going. Don't stand around. Spark the chemistry. You got to spark that sexual tension. Amplify the attraction. You got to amplify it. Smoothly take it to the next step. Keep doing what's working. Make sure and pass her tests. What I'm talking about here is just be proactive and get off this whole original thing. Another one that I've noticed is a really interesting common challenge is guys find something that works. The girl they're talking to is very into their whole thing. They get going, and kind of like you said earlier, they get to a point where it gets to the next step, like the woman starts touching them, and then they lose it all, and they stop doing what was working, and they start doing some other wuss thing. Don't do that. If something's working, keep doing it. And by the way, if you screw up and you stop doing it and she stops acting interested, go back to what was working. Okay? Don't go, "Oh, she doesn't like me." Stop. Press the reset button. Slap yourself right in front of her if you have to. Slap yourself and she'll go, what are you doing? And then turn right back into the other person. That'll work much better than continuing down the road. The kind of the ultimate cliche pickup line, "What's your sign?" Right? "Hey, what's your sign?" Right? It was like apparently very popular in the 60s and like early 70s. And like everything else, it went out of fashion, and now it's gotten to the point where it's actually used as a parody of pickup lines. Well, the irony of "what's your sign" is that it's still magic. It's still magic if you know how to use it. And even more of an irony is you don't have to know anything about astrology to use it very effectively. And I want to talk about why that is, because I think there's a much bigger learning than just the pickup line. If you can start a conversation with a woman using anything that you're going to learn here, and I don't even care if it's, hey, what are you doing? And she starts talking to you, and then you go, let me ask you a question. And she goes, yeah, and you go, what is your sign? And she might go, oh, whatever, and you go, you know what, guess what mine is. Are you, you a good guesser? A lot of women, many of them, because they're fascinated with this kind of thing, will go, I think you're a whatever, and you'll go, I'll give you one more guess, And a lot of times, I mean, it's actually weird, but women will guess your sign a lot if you say guess. Then they'll guess it, and you go, great, and then you go, okay, what's yours? And she'll say guess, and you go, no, just tell me, because you don't know what the hell you're talking about anyway. And she'll tell you, and she'll go, oh, I'm an Aries or whatever, and go, Aries, huh? And then you can say something like, tell me about the things about you that are just classic Aries stuff. And she'll go, oh, well, I am and this is just and this and that. I don't really have much of this thing that's usually Aries, but I'm definitely an absolute Aries in this area. Astrology can be amazing. What's your sign is still, I mean, it's a home run. Now, you don't walk up to a woman on the street. You can't walk up to a woman on the street who's walking there and go, hey, let me ask you, what's your sign? That's not going to fly well. But it still is brilliant. And what's the bigger kind of formula here? What's the bigger learning? Well, things that give you or her insight into her and who she is can be very, very powerful. Okay? We humans are looking around in this world trying to figure out where we fit in and who we are and what our identity is. Okay, one of the most successful strategies in internet marketing is self-scoring tests. Okay, self-analyzing tests. Who's taken a self-scoring test online in the last year? Okay? That's not a coincidence. We like that stuff. We want to know how we fit in. We want to know what our free IQ is, and we want to know what our relationship style is, and we want to know what a perfect match would be. Women, I think, are much more fascinated with this stuff than men. They want to analyze themselves. They want to have insight into who they are or a way to think about it. And these kinds of things can be incredibly powerful to open up conversations and to kind of take them to a deeper level. And if you start with that, and it might be just like a 2-minute conversation, and then you pull out of that and you back into all like cocky and funny and light stuff, that connection level will still exist. Will still exist. I was just up in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and I went and got a massage. I went to a spa, and it was just a random kind of event. Like I had to walk like a mile through the rain kind of thing, and it was kind of warm and it was fun, and it was just, it wasn't something that was planned at all. It was kind of a last minute thing. So and I thought I could walk. It turned out to be further than I thought. And I got in there and I walked in, and it turned out that there was this huge sports club and there were people everywhere. And the massage therapist came in, took me down to the massage therapy place, and on the way down the stairs, okay, and now keep in mind, I was up there to actually work on this program and to relax, okay? I was not interested in any kind of, like, let's just call it extracurricular activity. I was very focused. And so as we started walking down the stairs, something happened. I don't even remember what triggered it, but there was a little spark, like maybe she put her hand on me or something, and I said, what's with the, touchy-touchy or something. There was a little spark where it was just kind of on a little bit. And I said, all right, it's cool. So I lay down to get my massage. And normally if I'm getting a massage, I get a massage once in a while, I don't talk. I just get the massage and it's good, it's over, fine. Well, in this particular case, because it was kind of on a little bit, she said one or two things and I said something back to her, and she asked me what I did. And I normally don't tell women, because if I do, then that's it. The conversation is going to go a long time. They're fascinated. They want to know everything and whatever. It used to be I was embarrassed to tell them. Now I can't, because it'll go forever. So if a woman asks you what you do, say, hey, I'm writing a book on male-female dynamics and teaching men on how to approach women. You won't be able to get rid of her. You might want to write a book like that. Probably be a good project. Anyway, so I told her, I write and teach on the topic of dating. She goes, oh, I'm in a situation right now. And as soon as, we're talking a minute, like this whole thing took. As soon as that happened, the concept of astrological signs came up. And I don't even remember how it happened, but she guessed my sign, and then she started talking about hers. And within maybe 90 seconds to 3 minutes, the conversation went to this deep level. We talked for a couple of more minutes. It was pretty profound. She got some good insights kind of thing. I gave her a couple of new ways to think about what she's dealing with. Then the massage went on, no talking. Got to the end, walked out. She said, just wait here a minute. Ran in, came out, had her phone number with this long note written to me and her card, and I feel like you're like an angel sent to me kind of thing. We have to stay in touch. Stuff's just too much. So it can be very powerful. It can really take the relationship to a kind of different level. So try what's your sign, but try it in a different context. The power of hey. So in my original ebook, Double Your Dating, you probably read about the 3-minute email and phone number technique, where you just say, hey, you got email? She says, yes. And you go, good, write it down. And usually she does. Well, one of the kind of power points in that is the word hey. That word is, I've just noticed, is amazing between humans. Hey. If you just say hey, kind of with that uptone and you're enthusiastic about it, anyone that's around you, their attention is kind of focused on you. All right? As a matter of fact, when I teach that exact technique, what I say is talk to the woman, have a little bit of conversation, rapport, maybe tease her, ask her a question or two. Just talk for a couple of minutes and then say, you know what, I'm going to get back to my friends. Good talking to you. Turn around. And then as you turn around, right as the disconnect happens, you turn back around and you go, hey. And it's kind of startling. It's in the middle of a program as she's switching, and it just focuses all that psychic attention right on you. So here are some heys that I'd like you to try. Okay, here are 5 of them. You can use these to essentially start a conversation with any woman in just about any situation. Okay, use some good judgment, but hey, I got a question for you. Notice that I sound authoritative as I say it. Hey, I got a question for you. It doesn't sound like I'm trying to pick her up or be weird or skeezy. Or how about this? Hey, what are you doing? And if you say it with a little bit of a, like you're suspector of something, like, hey, what are you doing? It can be real fun. One I've learned from my friend who you're going to meet here in just a minute. If he's standing in line anywhere and the woman is like picking things up or touching anything, he always messes with them. He'll be like, what are you doing? You got to touch everything? Put that down. Hey, what's up? Hey, what's up is, you can use that. It's just like a universal. Hey, what's up? Oftentimes women will, if they're friendly and nice, they go, oh, hey, what's up? How you doing? And if they're not, and you go, hey, what's up? And you're friendly and just casual about it, they'll be like, oh, nothing. And it's almost like they're self-conscious for not being friendly. Hey, what's up? And then kind of the opinion opener, another thing I shared in Double Your Dating. Asking a woman's opinion on something. Say, hey, I think we need a female opinion over here. Asking a woman for her perspective on something. If you're standing in any bar or club anywhere, just try this. If you just want to test this one out, or at a coffee shop or whatever, you and your friends are standing at the bar, 3 hot women walk over and they're standing there next to you, and normally you'd never straight up go, just turn and go, hey, we need a woman's opinion on something over here. And they'll go, yeah, you know what? And go, you know what, never mind. Yeah, actually, never mind, forget it. Just do that, okay? Real safe. You won't actually have to talk to anybody. Just try that. You'll probably find that it'll get you into a lot of conversations. Because they'll go, no, what? We want to give our opinion on something. Okay? Hey, I think we need a female perspective. What do you think of this? Hey, very powerful. Let's give a warm you know, I don't even need to introduce this guy. This is the Craiger. This is the Craig. You've heard me doing you probably heard my double length interview with him where it was just one amazing idea after another. And I said to him, I go, hey, you want to talk at this program? And he goes, how long you want me to talk for? And I said, I don't know. He goes, 1 day, 2 days? I said, yeah, we need to, So get ready to take some serious notes. This guy's going to give you some great techniques. He's going to blow your mind. Give a warm welcome to my buddy, Craig. Nice.
What up?
That's how
All
we
right.
roll.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how old is Michael Jackson's boyfriend? Turn to your neighbor, tell him what you just learned. All right, guys, I want to talk to you today about how to start conversations with women anytime, anywhere. I've got a ton of material to cover and not a lot of time, so let's get right into it. How I learned to approach women. Back in my younger days, the act of going up to a woman and starting a conversation didn't even exist in my reality. It just was totally foreign to me. I thought the way to meet women was, like through a friend, or maybe you like work with them and happen to start, conversation. And, that was the way I tried to meet women. Was I tried to make friends with people who knew women, or I actually did try to get a job where a lot of hot women were. I never even thought that you could just walk up to women and start talking to them. It was just out of my reality. And then one day I met this guy named Mikey. And this guy was a little dude. He was probably like 5'4", and this guy was like the coolest guy in town. Everybody knew who he was. He hung out with the coolest crew, and he got all kinds of women. And I started hanging out with this guy, and I'll never forget the first day I hung out with him. We drove down to the beach, and we're driving down, and there's a car full of girls, like a Jetta with like 4 women in it, up in the right lane. I'm in the passenger seat of his truck, and he's driving. And he's like, oh, shoot, there's 4 girls, let's go. And he pulls up on the side of him, and he rolls down my window, and the girls are right here. And I'm just like, I didn't know what to do. He's like, say something, man, and I'm just like, what should I say, man? He just pushes me back. And he's like, hey. And the girls have their windows down, and they look over, they're like, oh, hey. He's like, what's your name? And one of them yells out, like, Jackie. And he's like, nice, what's your phone number? And she's like, tries to yell it out. He's like, I can't hear you. Pull over. So they pulled over. We pull over, and he gets out. I sat in the passenger seat. I didn't know what was going on. I was like scared for my life. 4 girls. And he goes over, comes back with a piece of paper with her phone number on it, and we head to the beach. I'm like, dude, how'd you do that? What'd you do? He's like, what? I just got her phone number. I was like, wow. So that blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like it. I couldn't believe it was that easy. I couldn't believe it worked. And I was like, man, that was too easy. I got to try this out. Here I was thinking that, I didn't even know that existed. And then here it was, as easy as saying, hey, what's your name? What's your phone number? So the next day I went to the beach by myself. And there was like a boardwalk, where people will roller skate and bike by. And I get out of my car, and I walk down this boardwalk, and a girl's walking by. And when she gets to me, I'm like, hey, what's your name? Hey, I'm Craig. Nice to meet you. What's your phone number? And she's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, do you have a pen? And I was like, I'll remember it. Just tell me. And she's like, okay, it's 805 whatever. And she gave me her phone number. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll call you later. And I was like, holy shit, it worked. So I kept on doing that all day, and I ended up leaving with I think I left with 3 phone numbers that first day, and it just totally changed my reality. I was thinking, oh my gosh, I had remembered a few days before when I was at Taco Bell and seen 3 hot women in there. I was like, wow, I could have gone up to them and got all their phone numbers and been hanging out with them, And then, sure enough, I ended up calling the phone numbers that I got that day, and they didn't really pan out because, I didn't really talk to the women. But it just opened up my eyes that was possible and that I could do it, And I have what I call the 4 immutable laws of approaching women, and that's going to lead me to my first one. We're going to skip over a couple things here. If you believe it will work, anything will work. I'm serious, anything, if you believe it. I have tried some of the most ridiculous things when approaching women just to see if this law is correct, and it is. I remember one time Farmer and I were hanging out in Chicago during one of our seminars, and we were talking about the same thing, ridiculous ways to approach women, and these women were walking through the bar, and I jumped out in front of them and was like, "What up?" And the girl's like, "Hey," and just started talking. Next thing you know, we're all hanging out. And I'm telling you, anything. If you believe it'll work, it'll work. And an even more extreme example, a long time ago, I was in Las Vegas with Mystery and our friend Alex. And this guy, Alex, was kind of new to meeting women. He'd never really had much experience with it before. And Mystery, somehow, using his connections, got us into a Mike Tyson after party. It was after one of his fights, And we strolled in there, and I mean, I don't need to tell you, going anywhere with Mystery, you're kind of a spectacle. But then add to the fact that we're the only 3 white dudes in the place. it was pretty hilarious. So we're kind of sitting there, Alex and I are sitting there like doing our own thing while Mystery's probably making out with like 5 or 6 women. I don't know what he was doing. And Alex is like, "Well, dude, I don't know how to talk to these women, what should I say?" I'm like, "Oh man, it's easy, just go up to them, like pretend you're like a white rapper, Just go up and be like, 'Yo, what up, ladies? How you doing?' I mean, I was thinking maybe I'd come and get to know you a little better, So then I turn around to like pay the bartender or whatever, and Alex is gone. And I look, and he's walking across the club to a group of 3 women. I'm like, "Oh no, see, he didn't think I was kidding." All right, and I couldn't hear what he said, but I'm watching from the back, and this is all I see. But the 3 women, they started cracking up, all right? They thought it was hilarious, and he was in. He was talking to him because he thought I was giving him something that was, legitimate material, and he went and used it like he knew, knowing it would work, and it did. It was amazing. So remember, if you believe it will work, it'll work. I don't care what it is. Do it. Next law of approaching women. You must be cooler than she is, and she must know it, okay? You need to make her, even though you're approaching her, you need to make her earn your respect and admiration, earn the right to keep you around. And I want you guys to write this down. You must be cooler than she is, and she must know it. And I just want you to think about it, okay? I want you to think about that when you're approaching women and thinking up of ways to approach women. I'm not going to get too into how it works because, I feel this one is more powerful if you figure it out on your own. So keep that in mind. Next, you must create emotion. And then I added at the bottom just because I thought it sounded cheesy and funny. If you start with a bang, you're more likely to end with a bang. Okay, you must create emotion, seriously. As you guys know, women have dozens and dozens of guys walking up to them every single day, and most of these guys do ordinary stuff. So to create emotion, you need to do something that she's never seen before, right? And I actually did some more experimentation with this. I got hired as kind of like a VIP host at a nightclub not too long ago, and my job was to make the women feel comfortable and show them a good time so they wanted to come back in the club. And I basically had an open bar tab, and it was designed to, I was supposed to buy shots for women. So, my first few nights on the job, I'd go up, I'd see a group of women come in, I'd be like, "Hey, ladies, let's go grab a shot." Thinking they'd be all excited, and they'd be like, "Who are you?" I'd be like, "I'm buying you a shot. Doesn't it matter?" And they just like turn their back or whatever. I mean, some of them would take the shot, but it was just weird reactions, And I learned that, even though I was dressed nice, I didn't have a name tag on or anything like that, but even though I was dressed nice and, had the authoritative position, I still had to come up with something original to say to them so they didn't, so it didn't trigger their autopilot, blow a guy off mechanism by coming up and asking for a shot. It was wild. And then, of course, when they found out who I was, they were like, "Oh, yeah, yeah." And then they'd come up to me later. It's like, "Craig, I'm thirsty," and, whatever. try to use and abuse the privilege, but it's wild, man. So what kind of emotions do you want to create? One of my favorites is surprise. Also, humor, if you can come in with something that's damn funny and get them laughing. And even anger. I found it's okay to piss a woman off at the beginning, and I'm going to show you some examples of how to create each of these three emotions in just a minute. Rule number 4, get right into it. This is my personal philosophy. I know guys like Mystery and Tyler do it differently, but I believe that you should start flirting with her, teasing her, or antagonizing her right away. I don't like to go in with a story. I'll go in with an opinion every once in a while if it's a damn funny question. But I usually don't approach women and start talking about, you know, my rock star David Bowie or whatever, you know, any of that stuff. I like to get right into the flirting and teasing. All right. Now, before I get into this, I skipped a slide that I want to go back to real quick. How to psych yourself up to approach women. I've noticed that, you know, even though I've been doing this for a long time, sometimes you go out and you're just not in the mood. And I was at a club at the Hard Rock in Vegas recently, and I'd gone out like, you know, 3 nights in a row, and it was Sunday, and I was tired, and I got there, and, you know, it was my last night in town, and I was, you know, trying to have a good time, but I was just stuck with all these thoughts, and, you know, how it goes, you'll start thinking, oh, these women are with these guys in the VIP, or they have boyfriends or whatever. And I noticed that when you're out and about on the town, in a nightclub, wherever, you're either inside your head, which means you're, you know, in your own thoughts and having conversations with yourself, or you're outside of your head, and that means you're talking to everyone else and just kind of going with the flow. And I realized it in this moment. I'm like, I'm stuck inside my head right now, and I need to get out, you know? So what I did is I just started talking to people, you know, random people. There was a dorm in there, and I was like, hey, man, is it normally this busy on a Sunday? This is a good spot. Just warming up. I went to the bartender. Instead of just telling her I wanted a Jack and Coke, I asked her, you know, how she was doing, and started talking to just random people, you know. And then I developed, well, I didn't develop this, but, you know, I saw some girls that I, you know, probably wouldn't normally talk to, but I'm like, I just need to, you know, warm up. So I just went and just started a conversation, you know. So, like, do warm-up sets, you know, start small. Start talking to people that you have no interest in meeting, and it'll get you pumped up and get you talking for, you know, when you do see that hottie walk in that you need to meet. Another thing I'll do is if I'm about to go meet a woman for drinks or something like that, I'll get on my phone, I'll start calling up my buddies just to get myself in a talkative mood. Or I'll call up girls that I'm dating right now, or girls that I know like me that I'll have a good conversation with instantly, just to get pumped up, you know. So use those 3 things. If you ever find yourself in a nightclub or, you know, even just at a mall or something like that, and you're having a hard time just getting that first thing going, call one of your buddies and shoot the shit, then hang up the phone and start talking to a doorman or a cashier or something like that, you know, and then go talk to some strangers that you're not interested in picking up, but just, you know, get yourself in the mood. All right. Are you ready? I'm about to give you guys a treasure chest of pickup lines. That's what you came here for, right? That's what I came here for. But I ain't going to give it to you for free. Oh, no. Like Tyler was saying yesterday, there's nothing more frustrating than teaching people something and then not having them use it. I have had several people come up to me, not at this seminar, but at past seminars. Oh, Craig, you know, I loved this one line in this interview. I was like, oh, cool. Did you try it out? And he's like, I'm gonna. You know, I'm just waiting for the right time, you know? So before I get into this, I want you guys to promise me that you're going to try out a few of these lines. Can I get a promise from you guys?